This is the Milo Sweet Podcast, where you'll learn to get unstuck. Start now. Conquer life's challenges by learning to do difficult. Find quick and clever ways to overcome. Wait, did you think life was going to be easy? Remember, all of your excuses are now dead to me. Let's get started. Guess what time it is? It's time for you to hit the subscribe button and find just 1% that you think will benefit from this. But if you're feeling a little generous, right? Or you're super free with your time right now, probably doing nothing because you're listening to this. Well, maybe if you're doing something, actually just make yourself free right now. Hit subscribe. What are you waiting for? Hit it. Come on. Hit subscribe. All right. Welcome to the Milo Sweet Podcast, Michele. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's hear a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Mila. So my name is Michele Yarbrough, and in case you can't tell already by my accent, I live in Georgia. And the name of my business is youaremadeToBloom.com, and actually on May 11th, I will celebrate 2 years of launching my business. And I was 51 years old, actually, when my life took a little pivot. I had been in ministry for 21 years. I was a preschool director, and when that time of my life ended, I was in this place of what am I going to do? So I've been married for almost 29 years, and my oldest son is 24, my middle son is 21, and my daughter just turned 17. My husband is a retired firefighter, but he's also a paramedic. So at the time of this recording, we are of course in the middle of our pandemic and of being quarantined, and my husband is on the front lines. He is a paramedic in the ER at a hospital here in Georgia. So 2 years ago when I launched my business, one thing I really enjoyed about being a preschool director was we had this little thing that we did on Monday, and it was called Mailbox Monday, and we would randomly deliver a gift to a preschool mom and just encourage her. So when I resigned, I was kind of like, okay, Lord, you told me to do this. Now, what do you have for me? And I work part-time too. I'm pretty much like a virtual assistant, and I have a few clients, but then I also have this dream in my heart of just encouraging women all over the United States. And literally, Bloom was the name of my ministry at church, and I kind of tweaked that a little bit. And I Googled the domain, You Were Made to Bloom, and it was available, and the wheels just started turning, and I created this business where I send Bloom boxes all over the United States. And it is definitely a small business right now, but during this time of the pandemic, it has pretty much exploded because of where we're at here at Mother's Day. So we've got Mother's Day and Nurses Week and Teacher Appreciation and graduations. And so I took this time to just really dig deep into my business and just try to figure out all things technical, to be honest, and how to get it going more. And I also work at a boutique in my downtown. And so without the boutique being open, I've been given more hours to work on my business.
It's an opportunity to work on your business and not a setback. I think that mindset is super important. I want to take a little turn for a bit and talk about what is it like to have a husband on the front lines?
Yes. Well, as a firewife for 27 years, I was used to him being on the front lines. And I think that's why, not to this extent, which I'll get to that in a little bit, but as a mother of 3 children and working at a church and having just to deal with this type of lifestyle, I think that's why it's given me such a passion for women and for encouraging them in whatever season of life. My tagline is live life in full bloom. And I feel like everybody's heard bloom where you were planted. And I have my own thoughts about that phrase. It definitely can be true. But I think sometimes we don't get to choose where we're planted. And if there can be issues in seasons of life, but regardless of where we are planted, we can live life in full bloom. And so I think just my years of experience and having him on the front lines like that, literally putting his life on the line, and me having to run a household and to have a job of my own, really created this desire and dream in my heart to encourage women. So every morning, he would leave as a firefighter, and I would have, of course, my own fears about that, and have to do my best to overcome those. And then when he retired, we were like, oh, this is great. And we knew he wouldn't be able to not work again. He was only 50 years old. So we knew he actually went back to paramedic school when he was about 46 years old. And they called him Dad, in the paramedic classes, because he wanted to have something else, for when he retired. So when he got the job at the hospital, I was used to him working in the ER, didn't really think anything about it. And then this started. So when he is literally working in the ER where people are coming in being tested, and at his particular hospital, they actually even set up a tent outside the hospital for people to come in and be tested if they felt like they needed to be. So, he literally is still currently on the front lines. And it is challenging, but at the same time, I couldn't be more proud. I couldn't be more proud. And through my perspective over the years, I realized that really my responsibility as his wife was to be his greatest cheerleader. And that is very, very difficult when you live this kind of first responder wife life. And so I do love to even speak to women, that are first responder wives, and just really encourage them during this time that, we just need to be their biggest cheerleader. And I'm not saying that we don't have needs either, but we just have to keep that line of communication open and letting them know what our needs are, especially when the kids are little. I mean, this would probably be a whole nother podcast episode. Kids are little and you've gone through your entire day, and he's walking in the door, at probably 8 a.m. If he was 24 on, 48 off, but most of the time that would go into 48 on, because in my area, we were having mandatory overtime for the firefighters. So, we just want to hand those kids over and say, we've dealt with this for 24, 48, how many ever hours. And even after 48 hours, they could possibly be going to a part-time job. So it is quite the lifestyle. It really is.
A lot of perspective. Like I was telling you before we started recording, that it's just perspective is very difficult to have right now. So if you're out there listening, you're thinking of how are these podcasts fitting together? It's really to help people understand how important communicating is and how important just getting perspective. Is very easy to read news or to interpret it a certain way or through the lens of what life you're living. Very, very different to have a conversation with someone and really not have empathy and not have compassion. And that's something, to be honest, I'm going to put myself completely on blast. I do struggle with that. I'm very compassionate, but empathy is putting yourself in that person's situation and really thinking about what it's like to go through that. Her painting the picture of 24 hours of your husband being gone, and you're like, take these kids, was very helpful for me. I know those days. I'm sending my husband a text at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 4:30, 4:45, 5 p.m. Hey, is your schedule still the same? Did it change at all? Dinner's still at 5:15, right? Not 5:16, 5:15. I need to know these things for my sanity. So I think it's super important for us to really listen and really just try to imagine what that's like. Now, there are women out there, their husbands are on the front line or they're on the front line. What are some ways we can encourage them?
I would say, number one, to always keep in mind what they are going through as well. and that everyone is fighting a hard battle. And that is amplified even more during this pandemic situation. So probably one of the biggest things my husband said to me when my kids were little, or our kids were little, and something was going on at home, and I texted him, and he said, "Honey, what do you want me to do about it here?" So yeah, so he is literally saving people's lives, putting his life on the line, and I'm mad that my oldest son didn't eat his broccoli. I mean, I don't know. I'm just, so when you talk about perspective, if I could sum up my life in one word, that would probably be it. And probably one of the best advice we got when we were in marriage counseling was the pastor told us to lower our expectations. And he didn't mean that in a bad way, as far as, marriage and life is going to be terrible. It was just that it doesn't, we have these high expectations. And if we try to always be looking at, what we expect things to be, most of the time, you've heard the old saying, you're either in a storm, kind of coming out of a storm, or going into a storm. And
I know.
And it doesn't mean that that's necessarily bad. It just means that we've got to figure out how to live life in full bloom in those situations. And probably one of the best things for me was discovering an organization called Firefighter Wife, and it is a national organization. And there are quite a few groups out there now more than ever, because keep in mind, I went through years and years with no Facebook, no Instagram, no texting. Oh, yeah. You could just get on the phone and call somebody. So right now we have just a vast support system out there. And so take advantage of those. Take advantage of the support system, and probably communicate with your husband would be the third one. I was actually a marriage mentor for Firefighter Wife for a while. And some of the things that these wives and husbands go through are pretty astounding. And sometimes it just feels like, you maybe can't crawl out of the hole that you're in. And my number one advice definitely would be to find a support system, and to remember that this time it doesn't last forever, which may not necessarily help you at the moment, but just know that that you're not the only one.
That, that's, you don't want to get, I think it's called Elijah syndrome, where you think you're the only one, like, I'm the only one doing this right. I'm the only one that cares. Yeah.
And so I would reach out to friends, to Facebook groups, and of course, number one is reach out to the Lord. Number one. And if, whether you're a person of, of faith listening to this or not, reach out to whatever faith is of yours, to find strength during that.
Just piggyback and say, I'm going to put it on Jesus, like the one and only. That's Absolutely. Just how I roll. And I'm not saying you have to say that, but I'm like, I'm going to keep it real right here, because I that's my truth. But I definitely agree that sometimes just starting can be very helpful, because there's times that I didn't know that I needed Jesus, and so I reached out for help, and I ended up right back where he needed me to be. So I do believe that just knowing you need help is super, super helpful, and that you have to at least be able to identify a problem to even know that you need it. Now, all right, that's another episode in the books. Hello? I said it's over. Why are you still listening? Like, seriously, the episode is over. If you're still listening right now, you know what? You're probably a chronic procrastinator. Guess what? I'm still listening to you. Come on, for real, seriously. We gotta go do something productive. No, like, for real. No, for real. Okay, you can keep listening.